Hi, I'm Mal from the Money Study, bringing you another episode of our Take 10 Challenge, up to number 104, and this is part 13 of buying an investment property. This one's all about buying an investment property off the plan. And of course, there's the disclaimer: facts and figures, information only, no advice in today's session. So what do we mean by off the plan? What we're talking about here is buying an investment property that hasn't even been built yet. So it's generally speaking, a developer. He might have a whole new suburb or a whole new area in a suburb, or just even one sort of development. But basically, what it boils down to is that the thing hasn't been built yet. You are purchasing it because you, in theory, can get it cheaper. You are buying it now before it's built, therefore you are paying it today's prices, in theory, rather than a future price. It might take 12 months to build, so you're buying it at today's price. And because the developer doesn't have to worry about turning around and finding someone to sell it to later on, all the risks involved, all the upfront money and so forth, that then have to advertise perhaps to sell it. By having a purchaser up front, generally speaking, the developer will give a bit of discount. So normally, in theory, it's a cheaper exercise to buy a property off the plan. But of course, this comes with a few problems, and one of the main ones, of course, is that you can't walk through a building that hasn't been built yet, and so we can't look at the quality of the workmanship. We can't look at the quality of the actual products and the actual materials used. We can't see any defects because they haven't even been built yet. And so we're placing a deposit on something we are hoping is going to be as good as the sales pitch that has come towards it. Now, I'm not saying this is a terrible idea, but what I am saying, this has got a lot more risks involved because we can't see indeed what we're buying. So this has been an issue even here in the ACT, where basically people were buying off the plan. It was taking years for the actual property to be built. And because house prices were going up and material prices were going up so quickly, that basically the developer pulled out of the contract, 3 years later, pulled out of the contract because they could turn around and sell this house at a much, it was going to cost them more money to build, but also they could sell it at a higher price because house prices had gone up. Now, the governments around the country are tightening up on this process, that if you've got a contract in place, okay, let's see this contract last through until completion. Because is it an agreed price? So are we indeed paying for an agreed price? But is there a clause in there? Be careful that if material prices go up, do you find yourself having to find more money later on, which sort of defeats the purpose of what you're trying to do by buying it off the plan. Sometimes these offers will come with what's called a rental guarantee, and they'll say to you, yep, if you're buying this for rental purposes, we guarantee you that you'll be able to get a tenant at a certain price, and if you don't, we will pay it. The rental guarantee will pay you that price. Be very careful of these things. I was a bit naive when I bought my first rental property in Melbourne. Came with a rental guarantee. It really wasn't worth the paper that it was written on, and we never ever got the rental guarantee. And of course, all it did really was they inflated the price anyway to accommodate the fact that they were guaranteeing this, really at the time, quite a ridiculous rent that was never ever going to happen. So be very, very careful. Obviously, get any sort of contract viewed by a good conveyancer to make sure that this contract hasn't been written out to the benefit of the developer, not for you. Of course, it's always a little bit hard to know also if we're buying this thing off the plan when we haven't seen it, what it actually looks like, what's its street appeal. Pictures can be interesting, dare I say, but is it reality? And that's what we're buying reality. And so it's always hard to know that is the price that you've agreed to, is it actually accurate? Especially if you're in a new development. If you're in a new development where there's a whole swag of new houses all around you, very hard to really ascertain their value in the future there. There's no surrounding sales to compare it to. Now, obviously, if it's a knockdown rebuild in an established area, you could pretty well imagine if they're building a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, whatever, at least you can do some comparisons. But when it's in a brand new suburb, where they've just bulldozed a paddock and put in some streets and so forth, and all of a sudden there's going to be 200 new houses, very hard really to understand what the value is going to be once the development is indeed complete. And of course, if all the properties become available in this development pretty much at the same time, you can imagine that once it's a paddock, and all these developers, it might be the same developer, it might be 2 or 3 developers or a whole swag of people. But basically, if it comes down to the fact that they're all sort of starting together, building at roughly the same speed, that all these properties come online at the same time. Now, obviously, some of those are going to be, owner builders, and they're going to live in it. These are, first home buyers and so forth. But there will be indeed a chunk of these people who have bought it for rental purposes. And if all of a sudden they've built these things and now they come online to sell, is there going to be too many brand new places in the same area? Because if according to the paper, there's a shortage of property and this is not going to be a problem. But I do believe that in some areas, in some cities, this must be a issue that needs to be considered. So again, it always just comes down to doing your homework and understanding the area you're buying in. What is the demand? What is the future demand if this is going to take 12 months and so forth? Is there any sort of statistics on the ratio between people who are buying it to live or people who are basically building it to sell on, or is it indeed rental properties and so forth? Now, of course, from a tax perspective, buying off the plan, buying any brand new property, accountants love it because of the great depreciation schedule that they can create. I mean, basically everything is brand new. So it means that everything is going to depreciate from that full value arrangement. So good tax deductions, no doubt about that, from a new property, brand new property. But as we've all said in every single one of these sessions, it's not always about tax. That's for sure. And of course, it comes back to the same old story. Do you buy a 1-beddy, a 2-beddy, 3-beddy apartment off these plans and estates and so forth? It always just comes down to again where. 1-bedroom apartments can be quite popular close to universities. But in an area where there are young families, 3-bedroom apartments are far more popular. So again, it's just a case of doing your homework, and of course also what can you afford to do. But off the plan, new estates, be careful because we are basically buying into something that's unknown. We can't walk through it. We can't see even, what our neighbour's house is going to look like. You might have seen some plans, but, will that thing really, you might have looked at the block and think, wow, look at the views, only to realise that a house across the road and a house beside you on either side, all of a sudden those views are really non-existent. So off the plan certainly does come with requiring a little bit more imagination, a little bit more homework, a little bit more foresight there. But in theory, can be great for tax, certainly can be good in getting a bargain, in theory, if you're buying in today's prices rather than buying in 12 months' time. Now, of course, if house prices drop and you've got a locked-in price, obviously not so good under those circumstances. So a lot of different issues to consider, but I do believe making sure that you've got a good conveyancer to look at the contract even before you sign the deposit would be a pretty smart idea. Other considerations with looking at properties and so forth like this it doesn't have to be that we're buying a residential property. Could be that, we're looking at commercial property. Commercial property in the right area can actually give you longer term tenants. They usually, quite often, especially with like things like warehouses and so forth, they'll take on a 10-year lease. And obviously with a business, they need to keep the place in good nick because of their clients and customers and so forth. So, and generally speaking, for the value, you get a better yield. The actual rent you get for what it cost you can indeed be an improved thing as well. It's probably something that you may not jump into initially, but with the right guidance and the right research, could be something that, just may be up your alley. Banks are not necessarily as forthcoming with loans, and you may find interest rates might be a little bit different and so forth if you're looking at commercial property. So again, talk to your mortgage broker, talk to the bank, do your homework on that one. The old situation between big cities or regional, there's this business of demand in the big cities, may not be quite such a demand in regional areas. Obviously, there's some regional areas that are growing at a very fast rate, and house prices are going up through the roof and rentals and so forth. So again, it's just the old story of doing your homework. Quite often, though, regional properties may be cheaper, which means you might better buy a bigger house and better house, perhaps for the same money. Will you get the same rent? Could be even higher. It just, again, comes down to the area, what you're trying to do. But it is this whole situation. How many people out there want to rent in some perhaps small town out the back of New South Wales or wherever it may be? Be very careful of places like mining towns, because these will change. Maybe the town is the flavour of the month because of a new mine or a new discovery, and everyone's moving to this area, and you think, wow, look at the returns I can get. How long is that going to last you for? Will the mine build men's quarters, or I should say people quarters, accommodation within the mine for people to stay? Therefore, the town all of a sudden doesn't need it. Will the mine, once it's got to a certain level, will the requirement for the number of people drop and so forth? Be very, very careful of a mining town. And of course, is it a property that you personally could renovate or modify over time to increase either your yield or your capital growth? Or is it something, even if you're not the builder yourself, have you got facilities or friends or know a good builder, a reliable builder that could indeed fix it up for you? Bit more work, bit more effort, and with the right sort of research, could indeed be a very good outcome by buying the worst house in a good street and so forth. All sorts of different ways of thinking about it, but happy to have a chat anytime about the situation. Look forward to you joining me on another session.